Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Alfa Romeo MiTo car. Alfa Romeo doesn't always have to be big, sporty, impress with performance or above average styling. This was the assumption made by the designers of the small MiTo model, based on Fiat Grande Punto components. Today, it is an interesting alternative to the small A and B segments. How does it perform after a few years of use? Engines. Under the hood, there were many different engines, both petrol and diesel. The latter are slightly less popular, and the range includes both small 1.3 JTDM engines, 80, 90 and 95 hydrogen phosphide, and larger 1.6 JTDM with 120 HP. The latter engine is an interesting combination of economy and performance. The former can only be recommended to people who drive a lot and do not expect sporty experiences. An even wider range of power is offered by petrol engines. Under the hood of the Alfa MiTo you will find both the super modern, two-cylinder 0.9 twin-air, 85 or 105 hydrogen phosphide, and the slightly outdated 1.4 16V, 70, 78 and 90 hydrogen phosphide. There are also more powerful versions of the 1.4 called multi-air, 105 hydrogen phosphide, TB, 120,150, 155 hydrogen phosphide, and multi-air turbo, 135, 163 and 170 hydrogen phosphide. The most powerful Alfa MiTo, marked with the name Quadrifoglio Verde, has a multi-air turbo unit generating 170 HP under the hood. There were even versions powered by a factory LPG installation with a 1.4-liter unit. Which engine to choose? Alfa Romeo MiTo owners are in a very good position, because each drive unit can be recommended as relatively reliable. However, there are better and worse engines, and as is usually the case, we recommend the simpler ones, which perform better and are easier to repair. The range is very wide and practically everyone will find something for themselves. As sure bets, we can offer the 1.4 16 volts and 1.4 terabytes Fiat T-Jet engines. The first ones are quite weak, but they feel great in the city. The second ones can be successfully called sporty, because they provide great performance. From a power of 120 HP you can expect acceleration to 100 km per hour in less than 9 seconds. Regardless of whether we are dealing with turbocharging or not, these engines tolerate driving on gas very well. The only serious disadvantage of the TB unit is the possibility of the turbocharger housing cracking. It is worth being prepared for such a situation. The compensation for this one mishap is the complete failure-free nature of this engine. We would be a bit more cautious about the multi-air technique with its rather original method of controlling the intake valve drive, without a camshaft. The problem here may be that in the event of a failure, it will be difficult to get cheaper spare parts. Especially since there are already people reporting this problem. It is worth using oil in these engines that is strictly specified by the manufacturer, even as to the brand. The 0.9 twin-air engine is also not particularly successful in our opinion. It is true that it has no technical flaws and has been reliable so far, but driving with a two-cylinder unit is quite specific. Theoretically, the high power is unfortunately not felt as much as the catalog data indicates, and loading the car with 3 people is already a problem. It is best to drive it before buying such a version and assess for yourself whether the engine's operating characteristics will suit you. We would not count on particularly low fuel consumption either. 2 diesel engines are offered for 2 groups of customers. The smaller 1.3 JTDM for those looking for a cheap means of transport, while the larger 1.6 JTDM for those wanting better performance. In terms of torque, this is the top unit in the MiTo, 320 Nm, which allows you to reach 100 km per hour in less than 10 seconds, but in terms of flexibility, only the QV version can match it. Of course, the cost of maintaining both diesels depends largely on the mileage. The 1.6 will last longer. The 1.3 will be cheaper to repair. The smaller one has a timing chain that needs to be monitored. Specifically, It is about the right level of engine oil that feeds the tensioner. If it is low, the tensioner will not work properly and will eventually destroy the chain. The larger diesel has a reliable belt, but on condition that it is replaced not every 140,000 kilometers, but every 100,000 kilometers. The problem with diesels is the DPF filter, which does not like driving short distances. Even in relatively young cars, filters are removed, which indicates a fairly big problem. Of course, we do not recommend this and advise trips out of town, which are always pleasant in Alfa Romeo. In addition, the filter removal must be carried out professionally so that there are no problems with the engine later. Particularly recommended petrol engine. 1.4T jet 120 HP as a reasonable alternative between fuel consumption and good performance and reliability. We especially recommend the diesel engine. 1.6 JTDM 120 HP as a powerful and economical engine that will not disappoint both those who want to drive faster and those who count their money at the gas station. What goes wrong with the Alfa Romeo MiTo? I don't think anyone will be surprised if we put electrics first. Fortunately, they are not as troublesome as they were in older cars of this make. Both the 159, Giulietta and MiTo are much better in this respect, but still not enough to match Japanese or German designs. Unfortunately, when something breaks, it is usually not the mirror control or the cabin lighting, but things responsible for mobility and safety. Problems are caused by ABS, fuses, and sometimes by wipers or the xenon headlamp leveling system. The DNA system also freezes, but the most troublesome is the power steering. Manual gearboxes sometimes cause problems. Cable control failures or even wear of the gearbox itself occur. This does not only apply to M32 gearboxes, but also to newer ones used after 2010. It is worth changing the oil in them every 40 to 50,000 kilometers. TCT double-clutch gearboxes work better, and there are no complaints about them so far. The suspension is durable for an Alfa. It is true that it is still a bit far from perfect, but it is not bad. Especially since the servicing costs are reduced by replaceable, individual parts, such as bushes and pins. There are no problems with access to spare parts, provided that you choose the engines we recommend. These are designs that have been widely used in other Fiat models for years, so servicing is hassle-free and cheap. It is worse when you decide on a multi-air or twin-air unit. Here, the repair costs can be high, because the parts are only available at authorized service stations. Unfortunately, authorized Alfa stations are not cheap. Sometimes you have to save yourself with used parts. By the way, don't count on your Alfa not being touched by a thief. It's a relatively young car, which is a tasty morsel for people selling cars in pieces. It's better to insure the MiTo against theft or effectively secure it. The 1.3 JTDM diesel boasts the lowest fuel consumption, which regardless of the version will probably not exceed 6L, 100 kilometers, and on the road you can easily go below 5L. This result is also achievable in the more powerful 1.6 JTDM. Unfortunately, petrol engines are not so restrained. The average demand for petrol in naturally aspirated units is around 7L, 100 kilometers, while supercharged ones can even exceed the magic 10L if you drive hard. Normally, fuel consumption should be around 7 to 9L, 100 km. I am talking about average, of course. Overall, the MiTo is a cheap car to run, especially since it is easier to buy an unused Alfa than a Skoda, Fiat, Ford or Volkswagen. If the stereotypical Alfa Romeo is prone to failures, expensive to operate, and parts are expensive, then by choosing the MiTo you can forget about it. The car is generally considered durable and reliable, not causing many problems and cheap to maintain. This is an Alfa that loses little in value, and that says something. Is it worth buying? Of course. Thank you for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, You no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you. On the website carme.pro, here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.